seen the Ancestry down as low as $59, I think, on special. So definitely keep your eyes open and you can get some deals. The ethnic estimate is an interesting thing. You probably have all seen at some point or other the commercials on TV, or I think even on radio and online, of, well, I always thought I needed lederhosen, but now I find out I need a kilt. You know, I thought I was German, but turns out I was Scottish, that sort of thing. Well, that's kind of cute, and it's a good way to sell stuff, but I will say that it is the least scientifically accurate right now part of the DNA tests. Really, the absolute main reason why you would do a DNA test should be for your heritage in terms of people and cousins, because finding near ancestors and cousins is the most readily available, and the science is pretty rock solid right now. But in terms of races, and here is a representation from an old textbook of the various races, and if you're like me, you see things like this and you think, my goodness, that's very stereotypical and racist, and it really is. There really is no such thing as race. It's a concept that kind of came out of the 19th century. Think Charles Darwin and the Victorians, who kind of wanted to characterize people by eye shape and how much slantedness there was to the eye and how wide the nose was, what kind of lips there are, what kind of ears, what kind of hair. And this was really in an attempt to kind of show a hierarchy of mankind. So closest to the apes, as it were, and then more evolved, more advanced. And of course, since these Victorian British folks were quote-unquote Caucasian, they kind of saw that as the highest echelon of being evolved, that we really had arrived as a race. But a couple points to think about here. The ethnicity estimates, while they are getting more and more fine-tuned, they're very inaccurate still. So if you take multiple tests, you're going to have major differences between there, because people are always moving. There's not really a such thing as a race when you look at your genes. There's no such thing as an African-American gene or a Caucasian gene or a Chinese gene or an Australian Aboriginal gene. It's just all human genes. So we're all really one race, the human race. And there was no point in history when somebody said, okay, from 1700 until 1800, nobody move. You know, stay exactly where you are, keep all of your genes just in your local village, and then we will resume moving around the planet. There never was such a time. Everybody's constantly been in motion and certainly sharing genes, as it were, wherever they go. So keep that in mind. It's not a silver bullet to say, look, I'm 100% Asian or whatever. You're going to be a mix of all of the different genes. So here are some different breakdowns, though, that being said. So certainly take things with a grain of salt, and even though they're highly inaccurate, they do kind of give you an idea within the last couple of 100 years the types of areas that your ancestors probably came through. And again, if you recall those colored bits of DNA coming down from your grandparents, your mix will be different from brother and from sister and so forth. But here's mine from my heritage. Shows me as 79.1% British and Irish. Iberian Peninsula, that's Spain area, 8.9%. Eastern Europe, 6.9%. Ashkenazi Jewish, 2.3%. And it does show a 2.8% Central American, Native American, which I do not know where that would come in. A lot of people think they're Native American, and it turns out that they really aren't. So in this case, I might have a tiny bit of Native American, and I'm not sure from quite where. It looks very different from living DNA, and this is a British company, and so they focus on the different regions in particular of the British Isles. So if Ancestry or another test tells you, hey, you're pretty much 100% British Isles, then living DNA would be kind of a neat thing to do as well, to see what little chunk of the British Isles you may come from. And this, of course, on the break down there, South Central England, Aberdeenshire, that's up in Scotland, Cumbria, Lincolnshire, Ireland, Northwest Scotland, Cornwall, Central England, East Anglia, on down through Yorkshire, Southeast England, and so forth. And it does show me with a 1.3% France, which probably is actually from Switzerland, I would say, knowing my family tree. Here's yet another breakdown. This one is from the My Origins under Family Tree DNA. So when you do a family finder on Family Tree DNA, it will look something like this. So again, 97% European. It does show a trace of Oceania and Eastern Europe. Not sure again what that refers to, although the Oceania might perhaps be some of that Native American. That's just a very tiny amount maybe there. Again, just looking through the way that they get their ethnicity estimates, I'll use Ancestry.com for an example. They have these reference panels, and so they go around the world and they test people and they ask them, have all your grandparents been from this village, basically, and if they say yes, they test them, and then they come up with kind of your average person from this area, and then by doing that they come up with your average genetic profile for each country or region around the globe. They've now updated Ancestry.com. It had been 26 global regions and 3,000 markers or 3,000 DNA samples from people in those 26 regions that they were comparing your DNA to see what percentage of this area and that area you were. But after their most recent update, they have over 16,000 DNA samples in their reference panel from 380 global regions. And here again is the way Ancestry used to show it, and then after their update, the way they show it now, it basically just kind of eliminated some of the outliers that I wasn't sure about anyway, and really beefed up my sort of Western Europe and British Isles, which I think is actually more accurate, in line with my paper trail going back. So they again do continue to tweak this stuff. They're not really changing where you're from. It's just they're getting better science in terms of comparing you with different global populations. This is really neat. One of the populations they chose was in Mongolia, and these folks have actually recorded their family history way back into recorded history, thousands of years, that this particular family has been in this area. So that's the sort of thing you really like to find when you're coming up with genealogical data. Here are a few of the other individuals that were sampled around the world who agreed to be photographed. There's a gentleman there from Mali with a really neat color hat. At least, well, maybe it's a lady. I don't know, I guess in the eye of the beholder there, but a very happy individual there, it looks like, to be giving a sample. So I think we pretty much have that covered. If there's any questions, we can come back to some of that. So back to the code that we share with our relatives. Here's an estimate. It's not going to be 100% down to these numbers. It will vary slightly. But you do have half of your DNA from mom, half from dad, and similarly, you are half related, so-called, to a full-blooded sibling. You and a brother would share about half of your DNA, and you and a sister would share about half of your DNA. And it goes both backward and forward in terms of percentages. You're about a quarter of each one of your grandparents. You're also a quarter related to aunts and uncles. You, of course, would be a quarter related to a half-sibling or a double first cousin. 12.5% would be a regular first cousin level, 6.25% first cousin once removed, 3.125% second cousins and first cousins twice removed, and 0.781% third cousins. Here's another way of seeing that, and you can find these charts all over the internet. Blaine Bettinger, the genetic